Hey, hello everybody. I'm back again, finally. It's been a few weeks. Um, I guess I'll talk about that. Uh, I have a mental illness, and I've had it all my life. Um, how do I know that? Well, I've been diagnosed several times with major depressive disorder. I've been treated for that, inpatient, residential house, outpatient therapy. It's been a long time, been years and years, decades actually, since any of that's happened. Uh, but I also have what's called persistent depressive disorder, and that is classified as a mental health issue, an affective disorder. The ABCs of psychology are affect, behavior, and cognition, cognitive. Affect is your mood. The other two are pretty explanatory, behavior and cognitive, which is your thinking processes. Of course, in depression, your thinking processes and your behavior are affected. The cause seems to be your mood disorder, and what causes that is a little more of a mystery itself in some ways. This is all according to the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorder, mental behavior. It's used by the psychologists and psychiatrists, I suppose, all around the world. Is it a reliable diagnostic tool? Well, even some of its creators and practitioners question that. It's shown some low scores on reliability. Still being used, of course. I don't think any true psychiatrist, somebody true to their calling, psychiatrist or psychologist, is a slave of the DSM, whether 1 through 5. Over time and practice, they get a lot more experience and have balanced approaches, I hope. Excuse me. Anyway, yeah, I've got a mental illness, according to that. Let me run down the symptoms here for you, and you can identify with this, I'm sure. I tick most of the boxes, and in terms of the persistent depressive disorder, which I've had since childhood, I've had these most of my life. For it to be persistent, you need to have at least a depressed mood and a loss of interest, pleasure in things that, whatever that means, brings interest and pleasure to normal people, whatever that means. Anyway, yeah, you have to have that for about 2 years running, along with 3 of these other 6 symptoms. Weight loss or gain due to change in appetite. That's been true off or on, but nothing major in that for me. I lately have had a loss of appetite, but I keep eating. Insomnia or hypersomnia. That is, insomnia is not enough sleep. Hypersomnia is too much sleep, and I've had both of those. I've had sleep disorder, again, all of my life. Psychomotor agitation or retardation. Yeah, not so much. Yeah, okay, a little bit, yeah. Fatigue, for sure. Fatigue, yeah. Feeling worthless or excessive inappropriate guilt. Yep, that's a big one too. Decreased concentration. Yeah, and that's bothered me more in my older age than it has in the past. Those have been persistent, certainly, for the last 6 or 7 years. There are swings, the pendulum, in how much or how less those things affect me. The difficulty in treatment with persistent depressive disorder is that those of us who have it, it just becomes who we are, a part of our personality. And that's also in the diagnostic manual, that we resist treatment because it would involve a major change in who we are. And well, let me get into that a little bit with my earlier understandings. When I was quite young, I just understood that I had a melancholy personality. You probably went through these, whether it's Myers-Briggs personality test or just some of the more simpler ones, anywhere from 4 to 16 types, introvert and extrovert being the basics. Yeah, I was born melancholy. I've had a low mood all my life, and I've never been a yee-haw, hoo-hoo guy. You're not going to see me cheering at a game, happy clappy in church. I'm just not that person. Never have been. Never inclined to be. Don't jump around in excitement for anything. I don't want to make this just all psychobabble. I'm going to bring in a Christian element to it too, because I am a Christian. And this raises the question of how I live as a Christian with a mental illness. I've been productive in life, functional. I'm not as functional right now as I want to be, and that's been a worry. For example, I was scheduled to preach today. Earlier in the week, I begged out. I didn't trust my mood, and I didn't trust my cognition, my thinking. Preaching is a sacred act to me, and at times I've pushed through certainly my feelings, and God is blessed, and people have said they were blessed with the preaching. I've had some pretty low moments. When you're a pastor, and I'm not right now, but I have pastored some congregations that were large enough, and at times I couldn't find a replacement at short notice. Some of these things with despondency and feelings are also, in Christian terms, simply temptations and attacks of the spirit. It's a battle in the spiritual world with principalities and powers of darkness. Now, if you're a agnostic or atheistic medical practitioner, you'd say, hey, man, you're a little crazy. You might put that down to delusional or magical thinking, according to the manual, which would land you in schizoid land somewhere category. At least schizoaffective disorder. The DSM-5, as I've understood it, has changed quite a bit from DSM-4. Not everybody's happy about that, but there it is. In one of those changes, what comes to mind is in describing schizophrenia. I've never had, the reason that I'm restricted probably to the persistent depressive disorder is simply symptomatic. I don't have the manic phases that would mark me as bipolar. I don't have high anxiety. I've had some. I don't have delusional thinking and no hallucinations except when I was taking LSD. And I haven't had any LSD since I was a teenager. I did have a midlife drug relapse, and that's a complication, of course, with depression. The two are interrelated. I am a recovering addict, as I've said here before in a recent video, actually. Yeah, I own the label mental illness. I don't believe I have a disease. I believe I have a disorder, disordered mind thinking. Where does that come from? I should have got into that earlier. In my case, genetics play a big part in it. I had a great-grandfather, my grandmother on my mother's side, killed himself at 40 years old. My great-grandfather on my father's side became an alcoholic at 30 and died as one. There is other mental mood disorders as well as bipolar in my bloodline. I'm not going to name names or go any farther than that because I don't want to embarrass anybody. Not that anybody probably of them will listen to this, but it could be. Drug addiction and alcoholism have been very prominent in my family, bloodlines. So yeah, I think there's a genetic disposition in my personality, both with addiction and with depression. The biological side of it, and this is only from reading, it's a combination of neurology and chemistry. So, there's a guy riding a bicycle across my yard. What about that? I'm taking a shortcut, I guess. No problem. Just a little odd to see. Not a kid, a man. Yeah. Take it easy there, fella. So, yeah, and then there's the problem of concentration. I've digressed all my life in conversations. So, neurology and chemistry, they're tied together in the brain. And that's why in the medical community, one of the primary forms with mood disorders, primary forms of treatment for mood disorder, probably 60% of it, the therapy consists in medication, the other 40% in talk therapy. Again, those are statistics on the internet. They're not, verifiable by my personal experience. I'm not a medication guy. I've had some concerns. I believe that there is something chemically going on in my brain. I have doubts about all the serotonin and dopamine. It's claimed that so much of mood disorder has to do with dopamine and serotonin. I've read other studies that say, yeah, maybe not. That claim that some of this is just guesswork. It's theory, and somewhat verified by medication. The medications are designed to control, either increase or lessen dopamine. Dopamine is that little chemical in your body that makes you feel good. That's why cocaine works and other drugs. Your body produces some of it naturally. Again, all the stuff I've read. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But it's something I've lived with all of my life, and I try to put the pieces together. I've only taken Zoloft and Prozac, and that's been probably 30 years ago. Zoloft made my heart race. It stayed up to about 120, 25 for about an hour after some exertion. Didn't come back down. So I stopped that. But I think it did make me feel a little bit better. It takes a month or so to get into your system. The uptake inhibitors, they're called. I'm sure we've come a little ways since then, since those days. I just don't like messing around with the chemistry in my brain. I just don't have enough faith in the medical community, in Big Pharma, actually. I do have a problem with Big Pharma. I think there is evidence that, especially in the first generation psychotropic drugs, the side effects may have created dependencies and increased the amount of schizophrenia in the world today. Yeah, there's a Harvard doctor putting that across. Hey, can't be wrong if you're from Harvard, right? I don't know. Anyway, I'm 68 years old, and even though I've had in the past some suicidal ideation, that's the medical term. Yeah, I've thought about killing myself, in other words. I only sat down once or twice with some serious intent, but never really what I would call on the edge of doing that. I have had a good bit of thought, like, yeah, it might be better if I had not been born, or wish I wasn't alive, or something like that. But I've never really made any serious attempt. I've never made any attempt at all, serious or otherwise, not an actual attempt. I've sat with a knife with my back against a tree in the woods and contemplated it. But again, that's been 30 years ago. I've had the odd thought of driving off the edge of the road, or something like that. But while driving, a little bit of craziness there. But never have done it. Yeah, I'm kind of getting tired of talking about it and talking about this to myself, really. But I need to say something about how I live with it. How am I making it from day to day right now? Yeah, let's talk about that. What's my situation right now? Well, it is low energy, fatigue. That's lifted a little bit. I'm not quite as tired as I was a couple of weeks ago, but I'm still pretty tired. I'm really struggling with motivation. Even I've been wanting to do a video for a while now. Just couldn't be bothered. Sorry about that, but just couldn't be bothered. I haven't been able to write, not for any length of time, not much more than 30, 40 minutes. Again, lack of concentration. If I do some reading of heavier material, and that's the only kind I seem to read, at least heavy for me, yeah, about an hour, and my mind is, I got to let it go. It's in bits and pieces. Some appetite problems. I'll go, 7-8 hours or more without eating, have a meal, and go a few more hours, and not really a meal, just snacky stuff occasionally. I just can't be bothered to cook and fix it, and I know how to cook. I've worked as a cook. Something happened recently that's helped me motivate a little bit. My mother had a bad fall a week ago yesterday, in the hospital for 3 days. I live with my mother. She's 89, and myself and kind of an adopted grandson, we look after her. He spent each night at the hospital, and I visited during the days while she was there. She fainted from low blood pressure, fell and hit her head on a chair, bruised left side her ribs, a slight crack in the collarbone. Pretty big knot right here, big old goose egg on her head. It's all black and blue now. And so the focus has certainly been on her, not on myself. But then again, I feel guilt and shame for not being a better caretaker. I do love my mother. I want the best for her, and I wish I was the best for her. Yeah, we're getting along okay, and my sisters call in and text and help. One of my sisters came to the hospital. I'm not a natural nurse, but I do care, and I'm able to take care of the needs right now. I have been moody. I do get despondent. I've had some struggles with self-worth. And I'm ashamed to say that when these things happen, sometimes I just surrender into videos, I probably have an addiction to, YouTube, social media. Too much time on there, and sometimes I get sick of it, and I do put it away. And This really makes me ashamed to even admit that. But, I can go through YouTube Shorts. I'm not on TikTok, and that's a conscious choice. But some of the same things are on YouTube, and I'll, bam, 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 flip through them and stuff. And, they're distractions, and they're part of my addictive personality. And I hope that doesn't let you down too much. My fear has been that by confession and just by naming the realities of my daily life, that people will lose confidence in me. My calling as a pastor, my calling to help people spiritually, my calling to preach and to teach the gospel of Christ, is the thing that gives my life meaning. Christ himself gives me meaning. I have no meaning, and when we go back to that suicide thing, it was the reality of the cross, that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that he would die for me, kept me from feeling completely meaningless. Meaning, the exploration of meaning, my meaning in life, the meaning of life in general, has also been a big part of my recovery from addiction. Rather than focusing on feelings which come and go, and they can be very dominating, I focus on meaning, the meaning of things. Again, the persistent depressive disorder means I have a flat affect a lot of the times. You're hearing me in real time in who I am and how I relate. This is how I relate to people personally, on an individual basis. In a group, you're hearing me as a preacher, as a teacher. And that bothers me some, that I don't want to pass on depression. Trauma, I know, is contagious. If you keep relaying enough of your traumatic experiences to others, they will begin to feel what you feel. The numbness that comes with trauma, the fear or panic that comes with trauma, the depression, the anxiety that comes with trauma, the doubts, the ambivalence. I've counseled trauma survivors, and when they relate their stories of their actual traumatic events in their life, I can feel it along with them. And if you're not spiritually healthy, it can be destructive. You can catch that virus. Joy is transmissible as well. People have asked me, I had an elder once ask me in a meeting where I was being debriefed by my elders not long before I resigned my pastorate, where is your joy? And that was a legitimate question. I think I laughed it off at the time. I think I said I had a serious joy, and you've probably heard me say that before. Yeah, I have a serious joy. But I've not had a lot of joy. And it's like somebody walking through the garden of flowers, and you're always looking at the thorns instead of the beautiful flowers and smelling the fragrance. You're always bemoaning the thorns that are on the roses, or looking at the shortcomings. That's part of that melancholy bent. I'm the guy where the glass is half empty instead of half full. How do I live then? What about all these calls to faith, grace, peace, joy, love in the scriptures? I experience those things too. I hope nobody's shut off by now. Hopefully you're still here so that you will hear this. The transforming agent of change in the Christian life is the Holy Spirit, the presence of God in our lives, who we receive through what we call the means of grace, and that is prayer, Bible study, preaching and teaching. You can call the communion service baptism as means of grace. But union and communion with the soul with God is Him speaking to us in His Word, the Bible. It's a supernatural transaction, and us speaking to Him. Prayer does not bring Him down to us, it lifts us up to Him. I've had many precious moments with God in prayer and Bible study. The reality of His presence is the greatest reality that I've ever experienced. Talking and thinking of Jesus brings the Spirit. The Scripture says of itself that the Word of God is living and active, and sharper than a two-edged sword. The Word of God that created the earth and the world is that same power is in His written Word as well. When we receive it by faith, we are transformed, it says, from one degree of glory to another, one degree of exaltation to another. We grow more and more into the image of Christ. Part of that image is being honest and open about who we are. I'm not exactly like Jesus. This leads me to another question, or another thing to say, really. The DSM-5 is the diagnostic tool of the world, especially the secular world, although Christian counselors use it. The Bible is not only a diagnostic tool, it is the agent of change for the believer. The Bible doesn't come to us in modern language. It's a 2,000-year-old document, mostly Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic, that requires translation. And when we translate it, we find many similar words that are the foundation of medicine, especially in the Greek. Psyche, which means spirit. That's where we get psychology. Many Greek words form the foundation of English words or medical terms. People probably don't know that. Now, they're not taking it from the Bible. They're taking it from Greek philosophy and early Greek medicine. It's not like the medical community is reading their Bible and saying, oh, yeah, we'll name it this. However, the Bible speaks to us in ways that are accessible to the, quote, common person. It's not strictly written for the academic or the professional teacher, researcher. The Bible speaks through stories. The majority of the Bible is narrative, story. It's in the form of poems as well, symbolic prophecies, teachings, parables. It uses metaphor, simile. There's a great deal of simile in the Bible. It takes the things of nature and says, this thing in nature is very much like this spiritual thing, or vice versa, Jesus referred to himself as the bread of life, the water of life, the light of life. He took common things, part of our everyday life, to illustrate spiritual things. He illustrated the unseen by what could be seen. And when we grab hold of the truth as it is in Jesus, when we grab hold of it, when we grab hold of Him with faith, saying, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Lord, I'm willing to be willing. Change takes place. Let me give you an illustration of this recently in my life. I posted some things about my mental condition on Facebook a few days ago. Friends made comments, said they're praying for me. And I could sense a change. A change in my mood, less discouraged, a little more motivated, a little easier to resist the temptations of the video and distractions. Last Sabbath was a disaster for me in terms of keeping it holy. This Sabbath has been better. There's also this message that we don't want to miss. It's the most powerful message, actually, of the Bible. The most powerful truth of God. We call it the gospel, in which Christ Himself died for those who have been broken and diseased by sin. Moral choices that separate us from God, but more than choices, we are born into a state of sin. That is, our natural default cognition, mood, behavior is away from God, not towards Him. And if God did not come to us with grace, if He did not speak grace to our hearts, if He did not tell us of His love, but if He did not die actually for us as a sacrifice for our sin, we would not have life, we would not have forgiveness, we would not have grace. A disease model does not explain everything in salvation. The church is somewhat like a hospital, but that doesn't explain it all. There's also a forensic side, which is legal, which has to do with judgment. Our birth, our genetics, our heredity, our choices do not excuse us from the guilt and shame of immorality. And we will be called to account for that immorality. And you can say, well, doesn't God take all that other stuff into consideration? Yes, He does. He's merciful and kind and good. And yet we will be responsible for the immoral choices we have made, for the evil that we've perpetrated in our lives, for the lies we've told, for the adulteries, for the coveting, for the theft, for dishonoring our parents. I'm quoting from the Ten Commandments. The two great sins that run from the Old Testament to the New Testament are idolatry and sexual immorality. And a third is often added, which is greed. Of course, they're rooted in inordinate pride, the will to be little gods ourselves. So, in breaking that cycle, Christ comes to teach us the truth, to be the way, the truth, and the life among us, incarnate, but also to die as a sacrifice for our sins, because the law of God, the very character of God and His righteousness and holiness requires that we must return the universe to a state of complete purity and holiness. Sin must be destroyed. This thing that we have here on earth is not going to infect the rest of the host of heaven. It's not going to be perpetrated for eternity. God is going to destroy sin and all of those who cling to it. But He's placed us on probation. And why can He? How can He justly hold us accountable? Because He's made a way of escape. He's given us the truth, and He's made a way through Calvary for us to be conformed to the image of His Son, who is the standard of true humanity. It's not the DSM-5 that's the true standard of what is normal or right or healthy. Although there's great truth in that, I think. There is the example of Christ, the very being of Christ. He is the human being that Adam was meant to be. Christ is sinless, completely unified with God, the Father, in character and purpose, but as the Son of God also in substance. He's very God in the flesh. It's through union and communion with Him. And the Bible says, I'll add this, union and communion with Him, we're healed. It says that with His stripes we are healed. He removes our shame and our guilt by dying the death that is ours, that we can have the life that is His. That's made by faith, that transaction. When we exercise true trust and faith in His sacrifice, in the work of God for us in salvation, when we put our faith in Him, even if we only understand very little of Him, if we put our faith in the person of Jesus, Jesus is the gospel. If you put your faith in Him, you will be healed and transformed. I think that the examples of healing in the Gospels show us that Christ can and will heal human beings. But we also know that not everybody is healed of physical disease or even mental disease, mental illness. So far in my life, I've had ups and downs. I've never been healed of this consistently lower mood. It's just a part of who I am. If I have not yet, I've prayed, I've exercised faith, I've trusted Him, I've had wonderful experiences with God, and I hope to continue having them. But my hope in salvation is not in myself, it's in what He has done for me. And He says that He will accept my faith in His merits, His sacrifice, as a righteousness that covers my sins. And I will have an entrance into heaven if I continue to have faith in Him. The culmination, the change that we must all have is for this mortal, dying body to put on immortality. And that happens when those who have died in faith are resurrected, or when those who are living in faith when Jesus comes see Him coming. The two groups will be brought together. You can read of this in 1 Corinthians 15. This is what theologians call the eschatological hope, the hope of last things, that finally those who have put their faith in Him will actually be transformed. Paul says, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, the mortal will put on immortality, the corruptible will put on incorruptibility. Right now, I'm speaking to you in a body of death. Within me is a corruption. Sin is not genetic. You can't put your finger on it. You can't have a surgeon cut sin out of your life. But it does affect our biology. Or it does affect our neurology, our behavior. It affects our affects, behavior, and cognition. By beholding, we become changed, is the Bible principle. By beholding Christ, we come to love Him more and more. And our soul is transformed by what we adore. If we adore evil, if we worship evil, if we are human beings of violence, theft and murder, adulteries, we become like that thing which we worship. There's a text, I can't remember, it's in the Psalms. Idolaters become like their idols. They have eyes, but they can't see. They have eyes, but they can't see. They have ears, but they can't hear. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have bodies, but they cannot move. What is true of a physical idol, that little golden Buddha you see here and there, those images in Hinduism or other idolatrous religions, the complete lifelessness of those idols represents the spiritual lifelessness of an idolater. If you idolize money, you will become like that thing. You can read about the digression and association of idolatry, worshiping the creature more than the Creator, in Romans 1, beginning in verse 18. I got my computer here. I don't have a Bible open with me immediately. I want to share something with you in closing. I should have shared it earlier. So, yeah, this is a ramble, by the way. So, I hope that you can forgive that. I am more than my illness. That is not the only identifying factor in my identity. There are 10 factors here that I'm going to give you from Klein Snodgrass, a New Testament theologian. I am my body. I am my history. I am my relations. I am my mind. I am my commitments. I am my actions. I am my boundaries. I am in process. I am my future. And finally, I am who God says I am. I believe the title of Snodgrass's book is Who God Says We Are. That's the theme. Faith changes identity. That's what I was saying earlier. Faith changes identity in each one of these factors. I am my body, for example. Faith means that I will no longer eat simply to please myself. I will eat to glorify God. And the glory of God is predominant in each one of these factors. Every one of them: body, history, relations, mind, commitments, actions, boundaries, process, future, is all changed through faith. Those who have faith have a different future than those who do not. Those who have faith are in a different process than those who do not. Those who have faith have different boundaries. They act differently. They make different commitments. Their mind, they think differently. They have different relations with others. They have a different history for as long as they have faith. And all of this they live within a body. I really highly recommend the book, Who God Says We Are, by Klein Snodgrass. Klein is spelled K-L-Y-N-E. Maybe I'll put a link to that if I can remember. I'll try. If I don't, remind me in the comments. I'll put a link to that book in the description. I've hesitated to make the video because for several months now my faith has been weak. It's not been gone, it hasn't disappeared, but it's been weak. Looking too much to myself, not enough to Him. I'm here in this moment with you by faith, believing that God can do something with my words, that God can do something with my confession. By do something, I mean that He can help you, as He helps me. And God forbid that my confession of weakness somehow undermines your belief that God can help you. If you see any failure in me, the failure is in me, it's not in God. Have faith. Have faith. Live and move and have your being in Him. You find Him in the Scriptures. You find Him in fellowship. You find Him in prayer. You find Him in service. You find Him in worship. Obedience is the highest form of worship. It says that I will obey Him even unto death because I believe in Him. Because I believe in Him. Thanks for listening. Don't know how many made it this far. Tell me. Like and subscribe, as we say in YouTube world. Like and subscribe. More than that, leave comments, please. If you connect with this link in some other format, like on my blog, if I share it there, or in Facebook, leave your comments actually on YouTube. If you leave comments on Facebook, then the people on YouTube don't get those. I get them, but they don't. And it's useful to interact, you know. Okay, that's me for this Sabbath evening. What time is it now? Yeah, we've got about 10-15 minutes to the end of Sabbath. Keep me in your prayers. I need your prayers. Yeah, I need your love. I need your encouragement. And I'm not ashamed to ask for that. And I've tried the best I can. Not that it's tit for tat, but I've tried to offer the same to you. I'm a wounded healer. Pray that God will still use me until the day when my time comes and I can rest. Yeah. Until then, let's all bear fruit for the glory of God. All right. Thank you.